Jace Varick didn't talk much anymore. Not to people, anyway. After 15 years of terraforming ungrateful rock balls for the Interplanetary Habitation Bureau, he'd earned a right to be left alone. Now, he swept floors, cleaned waste filters, and kept his head down in the forgotten corners of Earth's eastern megasector. His current post was Dockside District 9, once a thriving cargo hub for off-world traders, now a rusted-out ghost of itself. No one important came here, which was why Jace liked it. The rain came down sideways, as it always did in December, acidic, warm, oily. Jace pulled his patched-up synth coat tighter around himself and sloshed through back alleys, pushing a squeaky hover cart filled with recyclables and broken droid limbs. He whistled an old tune, something from before Earth became a client planet. It reminded him of the sky, the real kind, before it was gridlocked with orbital junk and commerce satellites. He turned into a narrow corridor between two derelict shipping towers to dump a load of thermoplastic foam when he heard it, a chirp. It was faint, high-pitched, and wrong. Not like a rat or a junk drone. This sound had shape, rhythm. It repeated in threes, then paused. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Pause. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Jay stopped in his tracks. Carefully, he set his cart down and edged toward the source of sound, stepping over broken cables and old food cartridges. His boots squelched in something he didn't want to identify. He rounded the corner and froze. Behind a tilted waste processor, nestled between rusting pipes and a leaking steam vent, were two small figures, no more than knee-high, huddled together. They shimmered faintly, their skin thin and gelatinous, lit from within by pulsating bioluminescence. Wide, liquid black eyes locked on his. Their bodies were smooth and translucent, shifting color like squid in distress. Soft lavender, then pale blue, then a sickly gray. They weren't human. They weren't any registered pet breed either. They were something else. Whoa there, Jace muttered, raising his hands. Didn't mean to scare you. The smaller the two chirp again, the sound lower now, more like a whimper. Its belly let out a gurgling noise that was unmistakably universal. Hunger. Jace looked around. No handlers, no collars, no tracking tags, no signs of anyone else. Lost, huh? He knelt slowly, fishing into the side pouch of his coat and pulling out a half-eaten nutrient bar. It wasn't much, just compressed starch and engineered proteins flavored vaguely like strawberries, but it was warm and edible. He tore it in half and gently extended a piece. The taller one stepped forward, cautiously, on three thin limbs. It reached out a tendril with slow grace, as though testing for a trap. The moment it touched the food, its skin flashed a warm amber. Then it snatched a chunk and retreated to its companion. They chirped excitedly and devoured the bar in seconds. Yeah, you were starving, Jay said softly. Where the hell did you come from? A distant horn wailed, one of the dock alarms going off a few districts over. Jace ignored it. He rummaged again in his pouch and found a second bar, his last one. He hesitated. This was his dinner. But those eyes... He handed it over. The little one stepped forward this time, braver now, and plucked it from his hand with delicate precision. It stared up at him for several seconds afterward, then made a sound different from the chirps. A harmonic hum, resonant and low. A tone that felt almost like a word, even if Jace didn't know the language. Blip, he said, pointing to the taller one. Then he pointed to the smaller. Blop. They both blinked at him in what could only be described as acknowledgement. Well, Blip and Blop welcome to Earth. He sat on a crate and watched them settle into each other's arms. Rain pattered above, neon signs flickered in the distance, and a cargo train thundered somewhere behind the stacks. The alley smelled like rust and ozone and hot circuitry. For the first time in a long time, Jace felt something other than numb. He felt needed. It lasted exactly 19 minutes. That's when the sky cracked open. It started with the light. A sudden, piercing flash, bright enough to cast shadows sideways and then erase them entirely. Jay stood up so fast he kicked over his hover cart. Above the fractured skyline, the clouds began to swirl, not in a storm pattern, but in something eerily precise. Concentric rings, like ripples in reverse. Every comm unit in a 10-block radius buzzed and went dead. Then came the sound. Not thunder, not engines. Something deeper. A presence. Jace's eyes adjusted just in time to see the first ship emerge. It was enormous, miles long, black as obsidian, bristling with geometry so complex a human I had trouble processing it. A jagged crescent. It hovered silently above the city. Then another appeared behind it. And another. Within 30 seconds, the sky was full. More ships, thousands of them, slipped into the fractures and clouds. They formed a vast constellation in perfect symmetry, casting Earth in shadow. The planet's orbital defense grid lit up with red alerts. Civilian satellites went offline. Government channels scrambled. Emergency sirens wailed, then cut out. And then came the message. It didn't come through sound waves. It arrived directly in every neural uplink, every implant, every screen, every device on the planet. You have fed the royal offspring. Honor Protocol 7A initiated. Fleet now en route to acknowledge the guardian of the first meal. Jay stared at the two creatures, who were now glowing gently, as if wrapped in invisible starlight. They looked up at him with wide eyes. Blip spoke for the first time, his voice calm, clear, and somehow ancient. "Thank you, Jace Varric. You have fulfilled the pact. The throne will remember." Jace turned to look at the blacked-out sky. "Okay," he said, backing up slowly. "What the hell?" For exactly 7 seconds, all of Earth stood still. It wasn't fear at first. It was awe, a universal breath held across continents, oceans, orbital stations, and the outer moon colonies. Everyone, everywhere, had looked up and seen the same thing. The arrival. The Phyrexian fleet didn't scream into the atmosphere with fire and thunder like in the old movies. It came silently, like gods taking their places in the heavens. Over 7,000 ships hovered in perfect mathematical formation, each one a marvel of architecture, a contradiction of physical laws, and a symbol of absolute, unstoppable power. Their hulls shimmered with dark energy shields, bending light around them, flickering with distant stars not visible from Earth's night sky. And then, without warning, the panic began. Jace Varric sat frozen on the crate in Dockside District 9, his eyes locked on the sky, as if staring too hard might cause it to fall. Around him, sirens wailed. Drones zipped overhead in emergency patrol patterns. His wrist comm, long dormant and barely functioning, flared to life, flooding with alerts, government directives, and garbled emergency broadcasts. Global Security Council alert. Unknown force entering low orbit. Do not engage. Repeat. All civilian vehicles must remain grounded. Martial law temporarily. Fleet size estimated in the thousands. This is not a drill. Blip and Blop stood calmly next to him, their previously soft glow now radiant. They didn't look scared. They looked expectant. Jace turned to them, half shouting over the growing chaos. "You want to tell me what's going on? What the hell are you?" Blop tilted his head. "We are children." "Children of what?" Jace barked, gesturing to the sky, where another monolithic ship pierced the cloud layer with grace and menace. Blip stepped forward, his posture unervingly regal. "We are the Phyrexian airlings, born of the Imperial clutch. This is our retrieval." Jace blinked. "Retrieval? You're saying all that," he jabbed a finger at the sky, "is because of you?" Blop nodded. "You offered sustenance during the period of separation, the first feeding after the hatching. This act binds you to the pact of the first meal, which means you are now the honor-bound guardian of the royal offspring." There was a long silence as those words hung in the air like smoke. Jay sat back down. "Oh, hell no. United Earth Command, Prime Defense Bunker. 3 miles beneath the Atlantic crust, the top brass of Earth's surviving government agencies were screaming at each other. "Who is this Jace Varric?" barked Admiral Strin, slamming his fist on the hologram table. "Why does every diplomatic channel route to him? He's not even cleared for space flight," someone muttered from the shadows. "He's a janitor, a terraformer, retired." "Then why?" Another voice said, pinching the bridge of her nose, "Is a 7,000 ship armada refusing to speak with anyone but him?" The answer came as a ping on the main console. "Incoming communication request. From Threxian High Imperator, Fleet Council. Recipient, Jace Varric, Honor-Bound Guardian. All others, restricted. Back in District 9, Jace's wristcom began to pulse with golden light. A symbol formed on its cracked screen, a crest of 7 interlocking stars orbiting a single glowing seed. He hesitated. Blip touched his arm gently. It would be rude not to answer. Jace sighed, then tapped the icon. Immediately, the air around him shimmered. A holographic projection formed, fully three-dimensional, crystalline in clarity. It was not a human face. The Threxian High Imperator tower before him, encased in obsidian armor that pulsed with starlight, for symmetrical eyes blinked in perfect unison. A tongue flicked from beneath a slit-like mouth. When it spoke, its voice wasn't audible. It was felt like a symphony played on your spine. Honor-bound Guardian Jace Varric, your kindness has been observed. You are hereby acknowledged. Jace raised both hands. Look, I just gave them a snack. I didn't know they were royalty. The Imperator didn't blink. It continued. The pact of the first meal is older than your civilization. It binds us in sacred duty. Your guardianship grants you legal dominion, military alliance, and sovereign status over Earth. Jace blinked. Wait, what? No, I don't want that. Refusal requires either A, formal abdication through blood trial, or B, death. Jace turned slowly to Blip and Blop. You could have mentioned that before. Blop looked sheepish. We were very hungry. The warships react. As the message concluded, a ripple went through the fleet. Thousands of vessels reoriented themselves ever so slightly, pivoting in orbital sync around one small blue planet. For the first time in galactic history, Earth was declared protected royal territory. To some in the galaxy, this was cause for celebration. The Threxians were ruthless, but they honored the pact. No planet protected under it had ever been invaded again. Earth was now under the umbrella of an empire older than most stars. But to others, it was a provocation. Deep in the shadow of Saturn's rings, another fleet stirred. The Griveran Syndicate, enemies of the Threxians for millennia. They saw Earth as a new foothold, a wild card, a rogue link in the ancient chain. They began to move. Jace's new problem. Back on Earth, Jace's life was unraveling. His old comm ID was replaced by an encrypted royal frequency. A small, sleek alien ship landed outside his apartment, awaiting his orders. His face was plastered across every news feed, half as a joke, half as a god. People were rioting, others were worshipping. A cult had already formed around Blip and Blop. But Jace just wanted to be left alone. Blip, Blop, he said as they hovered in his tiny apartment. Is there any way I can, not be your space to add? They exchanged a glance. There is a method, Blip said carefully. You can abdicate through honorable trial. Jace groaned. What kind of trial? Trial by galactic arena, Blop said helpfully. You'll have to defeat several champions from other planets in single combat. Jace stood slowly. I was a janitor yesterday. We believe in you, Blip said. You gave us half your lunch, Blop added. Great, Jace muttered. Killed by aliens because I shared a snack. Outside, the skies shimmered again as more Threxian ships entered orbit, just in case their new guardian needed reinforcements. Jace looked out the window and sighed. Next time, he whispered, I'm skipping lunch. Jace Varric woke up to find himself floating in space. More accurately, he woke up inside something that was floating in space, a spherical room of humming, translucent walls, dimly lit by shifting bands of light that flowed like oil across a drum surface. There was no floor, no ceiling, no seams, no door, just a single disembodied voice saying, Welcome, honor-bound Guardian. The acclimation process will now begin. Nope, Jace croaked, his voice hoarse from sleeping in Zuji. I'm not a guardian. I'm a janitor, and this is officially way above my pay grade. A soft chime responded. You fed the royal offspring. You are now legally and spiritually recognized as the honor-bound guardian of the Threxian dynasty. Spiritual, Jace flailed, slowly rotating in the chamber. I'm not even religious. That is acceptable. The Phyrexian faith will interpret your role for you. Oh, wonderful, Jace muttered. Just then, part of the wall evaporated with a shimmer, revealing a massive, cathedral-like hangar bay and a floating walkway that led to an alien transport pod waiting at the far end. Blip and Blop were already inside, cheerfully waving with their three-finger hands. They'd been fitted with ceremonial armor, scaled, silver blue, and glowing with embedded runes. Blop even had a little crown. Jace, on the other hand, was still wearing oil-stained cargo pants and a t-shirt with a faded logo that read, "Terraformers do it with pressure." He sighed. Well, he mumbled, time to go learn how to not get killed in space court. Earth below, Earth above. While Jace was being shuttled to the Devourer of Suns, the capital ship of the Phyrexian fleet, things on Earth were not okay. Panic had fully set in. International governments were scrambling to reclaim authority after being entirely bypassed by the alien communication protocols. Earth's top AIs were locked out of orbit by Phyrexian encryption patterns older than human mathematics. Earth's planetary defense grid had been rendered irrelevant by a single clause in an alien contract. No hostile action shall be taken against the Guardian. Penalty, annihilation. This clause was broadcast on every frequency. And then came the demands, not from the Phyrexians, but from Earthlings. China, Russia, Brazil, and the European Federal Bloc each wanted Jace to return sovereignty to qualified leadership. Religious leaders across the globe interpret the event as divine intervention or blasphemy. New cults formed overnight. The first Mayalists began worshipping Jace as a prophesied feeder of the cosmic seed. The Guardless, a radical movement, claimed the strays were demonic in nature, and Jace had sold humanity's soul. Jace's name was on every screen. His face had been deep-faked into everything from hero banners to galactic pornos. And still, none of the Phyrexian warships budged. They remained in perfect formation, orbiting Earth like silent judges. Meeting the fleet, inside the Devourer of Suns, Jace felt small, smaller than usual, and not just physically. The corridors were vast, cathedral-like, lined with glowing panels inscribed in pulsating alien glyphs. At regular intervals, soldiers, 7 feet tall, insectal, clad in living armor, bowed deeply as Jace passed. Honor-bound Guardian, they said in unison, their voices perfectly synchronized. Jace awkwardly nodded, mumbling, "Hey, yep, thanks, no need to bow." At last, he was escorted into the Fleet Council chamber. A dozen high-ranking Phyrexians sat around a levitating crystal table, their faces hidden behind ceremonial masks. The High Admiral, 8 feet tall, draped in red void silk, spoke first. "You are Jace Varick. We have watched the security footage of your feeding gesture 79,000 times. It is poetic. I just broke my granola bar in half," Jace said. One of them almost choked. The room gasped. One Phyrexian fell to its knees. The Admiral nodded solemnly. "Such risk, such selflessness. You are truly worthy." "Please stop saying that," Jace muttered. "Look, I'm flattered, truly, but I'd like to return to the position of space godparent and go back to cleaning algae off heat vents." The Admiral tilted its head. "You wish to abdicate?" "Yes." "Very well. According to Protocol 7A, abdication is granted only by passing the trial of release." Jace stiffened. "Right. The arena thing. What? I just fight a few diplomats." The room was silent. Then the Admiral spoke again. "You will face 5 gladiators from 5 ancient races, each chosen to test your heart, mind, and combat readiness. You must survive each trial. If you fail, your title is revoked, and your planet is disqualified from pact protection. Meaning, Earth will be deemed a rogue world, and likely annexed by our enemies within the cycle." Jace groaned and put his face in his hands. All because of Snack. Meanwhile, in the Griffin Abyss, far across the system, a colossal ship drifted like a dead god through the dark. Inside, the Griffin Syndicate, a rival empire infamous for its blood wars and psychic assassins, had intercepted the Phyrexian transmission. Their supreme executor, a being with no face and 16 claws, tapped it alone on the obsidian table. Earth now held the Guardian, a civilian, a vulnerable link. His advisors hissed and buzzed. "We move now," said the executor. before the arena ends, before Earth learns how powerful its new protector truly is. Behind him, war engines stirred. A second invasion was coming. Back in orbit, arena training begins. Jace had never been a soldier. He had a bad knee from falling off a drone crane 10 years ago. His most aggressive interaction in recent memory was yelling at a vending machine. And now he was supposed to fight some of the deadliest beings in the known universe. In front of them. Yeah, no pressure, he muttered, as he was fitted into training armor by a hovering Phyrexian drone. Blip and Blop floated nearby, watching intently. "We believe in you," Blip said. "You were chosen," Blop added. "No, I wasn't," Jay snapped. "I fed you. Out of pity. That's not destiny. That's lunch." The drone handed him a training staff. Jace held it upside down. "Begin combat simulation," a voice announced. "Wait, simulation?" A holographic arena formed around him. Walls, traps, enemies, all glowing but solid. The first opponent materialized, a brute from the Mod Dominion, a 6-armed lizard covered in acidic saliva. Jace screamed. The battle began. Jace Varric stood on the precipice of an impossible stage, a battlefield not of dirt and stone, but force fields, floating platforms, anti-grav fire pits, and celestial architecture designed to intimidate even the bravest warlords. The galactic arena, orbiting a dead star on the edge of the Orion Gate, wasn't just a coliseum. It was legend. It had existed longer than Earth's concept of years. Emperors had died here. Dynasties had risen. Gods, some whispered, had bled, and now it was the setting for a janitor's trial. Jay stood in the preparation chamber, armored awkwardly in Phyrexian honorwear, a shimmering skin-tight material laced with adaptive alloys and, unfortunately, a cape. "Why the cape?" he muttered. "Ceremonial," Blip said from a floating observation platform above him. "It also looks cool," Blop added. Jay sighed and stared at the countdown projected before him. First trial, 60 seconds. He didn't know what was worse. The fact that 5 deadly opponents were queued up to kill him, or that the fate of Earth hinged on his ability to not die spectacularly in front of the largest intergalactic audience ever recorded. Broadcast reach, 173 billion species. Spectator odds, Jace Varric, 20,000 to 1. Status, pitiful underdog. He had no idea how to fight. No elite training. No enhanced reflexes. No secret heritage. All he had was a mop. Literally. The Phyrexians had modified his favorite old janitorial mop with energy-conductive fibers and installed a shock core at the base, calling it the Staff of Humble Cleansing. It glowed slightly, smelled faintly of bleach. Jace called it Plan Z. The timer hit 0. The first trial, strength, the floor dropped away. Jace plummeted into the arena. Anti-grav buffers caught him just before impact, landing him gently on a polished obsidian slab the size of a city block. He barely had time to blink before a creature erupted from the far side of the platform, 12 feet tall, muscle-bound, with 6 arms, each wielding a different archaic weapon. It roared in 3 languages simultaneously. Jay screamed back, waving his mop like an idiot. The crowd cheered. He dodged a hammer strike by sheer accident, slipping on the perfectly polished floor, and rolled into cover behind a statue of a long-dead alien philosopher. "Come on, brain," he whispered. "Think." He remembered Blip's words earlier that day. You don't have to win. You have to survive. The arena tests your nature, not your strength. And then he remembered something else. Clause 7, buried in the Phyrexian rulebook. Kindness shown during combat may earn trial forgiveness if granted thrice. A long shot, but it was all he had. So Jace made a choice. He stood up from cover, held his mop over his head, and shouted, "Wait!" The monster paused, confused. Jace dropped the mop, raised both hands, and said, "I'm not here to kill you. I don't even know how to fight. But I know this. If you don't have to kill me, then maybe don't." A beat. The beast blinked all 6 eyes, snarled, then unexpectedly it bowed. First act of mercy witness. The crowd erupted. Jace fainted. The second trial, intellect. Jace awoke in a cube of shifting puzzles, orbiting a sun made of data. A voice spoke. Decipher the pattern. Escape in 300 seconds. Or perish. Jace blinked blearily at the wall of symbols. Great, he muttered. Sudoku in space. But then the pattern started to look familiar. He leaned in. Rows, grids, repetition. Layers of cleaning schedules from back in his terraforming days. His old brain, trained by decades of routine, kicked in. He didn't solve the puzzle with logic. He solved it by habit. When the last panel slid into place, a glowing door opened. Second trial. Passed. No violence detected. Second act of mercy witnessed. The third trial. Rage. The third test dropped Jason to a room filled with projections of his past failures. Every person he'd ever disappointed. His estranged brother. The co-workers who called him a burnout. The colony leaders who'd scapegoated him during a terraforming drought. They shouted at him, blamed him, jeered. And behind him stood a pedestal holding a weapon called the Screamer Blade, known to turn rage into explosive force. The test was simple. Pick up the weapon and fight the phantoms. Jace did something else. He sat down and cried, not out of weakness, but because he accepted what he'd done, what he hadn't, and that he had tried, always tried. The projections faded. Emotional mastery achieved. Third act of mercy witnessed. Trial forgiveness claimed. Honor-bound guardian may abdicate without death. Jace let out a long, shuddering breath and laughed. Thank you, he said to no one in particular. Galactic broadcast. Breaking news. Across the stars. Species watched in silence as a human. Unknown, untrained, unimpressive. Passed the trial released not through violence, but through empathy, restraint, and emotional honesty. Commentators dubbed him the kind warrior. Wagers flipped. Cultural paradigms shifted. A dozen warring systems sent ambassadors to Earth within the hour. Meanwhile, at the Griffin front, the executive of the Griffin Syndicate, having prepared to strike Earth the moment Jace failed, now saw an unexpected problem. Earth was still under pact protection. And worse, the Threxians had just updated Earth's diplomatic status from temporary custodian planet to trusted ally of the crown, protected by deed and deedless valor. Griffin warships stopped mid-jump. Earth was no longer a vulnerable target. It was a symbol, and no one wanted to start a war over a janitor with a mop. Back on Earth, the return. Jay stepped off the Threxian shuttle to thunderous applause, half of Earth watching from screens, rooftops, and VR hubs. Journalists screamed questions. The first maleless cult tried to hoist them on their shoulders. Children waved glow sticks shaped like mops. Blip and Blop walked beside him, armored but grinning. Jace lifted one hand. I'm not a hero, he said, but I am hungry. 1 week later, Jace returned to Dockside District 9. His old apartment had been cleaned by a squad of honor drones. His hover cart was repainted gold. His mop had been upgraded to a ceremonial staff, but he still used it to clean. Blip and Blop now lived with him as interstellar diplomatic envoys. They had discovered cartoons and cereal. And sometimes, when the night was clear, Jace looked up and saw the warships, still there, silent sentinels. He'd been offered planets, a seat on the council, a personal moon. He turned it all down, because what he really wanted was peace, and maybe a decent cup of coffee.